This is the original podcast edition of The Guild of the Cowry Catchers by Abigail Hilton, now part of the complete Pirates of Wefravain series. The books are available as audiobooks, ebooks, and paperbacks. This podcast originally aired from 2010 to 2014. Stick around after the story for commentary from me, the author, more than a decade later. The Guild of the Cowry Catchers, a story of pirates in Panamindorah. Written, narrated, and produced by Abigail Hilton. Book 5, Shores Beyond the World. Warning: this novel was intended for people who shop in the grown-up section of the bookstore. If you need to ask whether you will be offended, you probably will. Episode 9. Chapter 26. The Cowry Catcher's Story.
The Mayan dialect is very old, with elements of what is sometimes called High Grishnod. However, a study of ancient documents and stone carvings on Mayan Minor leads one to believe that High Grishnod was actually the Fawn dialect of Old Wefravain. This supports the notion that Mayan Minor was once the seat of a sophisticated kingdom ruled by fawns before Grishnod invaders conquered it and turned it into a theater for blood sports. Strong as they are, it seems unlikely that Grishnods could have done this without the assistance of wyverns. Gwaine, the truth about wyverns. Well, it is a world where everything flies,
said Gwaine.
It looks like the sky, don't you think?
Gerard had to agree that it did. Sylvia was asking a lot of questions about the characteristics of spiderweb and how it was used.
Spiders make several kinds of web,
said Gwaine.
Some are sticky and some aren't. The fawns on the island have been catching spiders for generations and keeping them in captivity to make web. Rope made from blended web and hemp is the strongest I've ever tested. The best Mayan silk is also created partially from the web of diving spiders, which Grishnods purchase from fawns living on the island. The Grishnods are ignorant of its origins. They call it taffy down and believe that it comes from a plant. Spider venom is sometimes extracted and used by fawns to catch and paralyze prey. It is sold sometimes under the name Black Tang.
Gerard was relieved to see that no water had gotten into the pouch around his neck. Myrta was wringing out her dark hair beside him. Serwyn and Marlowe were dumping water out of their boots, and Sue was trotting restlessly around the room. She glanced up and hissed. Gerard followed her gaze, and saw, with horror, that what he'd taken for a shadow behind a frill of coral was actually a spider about the size of Silvio. It was advancing cautiously across the ceiling above their heads, waving its front legs in a vaguely threatening manner. It could have dropped on any one of them at any moment. Gerard remembered how quickly the spiders had moved in the hold of the water sprite. He remembered being black and blue from neck to waist, and the terrible helpless feeling of paralysis. Gwaine was watching the spider with less concern than Gerard thought the situation warranted. Gerard cleared his throat.
And how did these creatures feel about your harvesting their web, killing them for their venom, and locking them up in the holds of ships to attack unwary Temple Sea Watch?
Gwaine shook his head.
I helped stop the trade in captive spider parts. The Cowry Catchers traded freely with us for several years. They can harvest web and venom without harming the spiders. But it's difficult to get shelts, including fawns, to pay for things that they can just take. As for the hold of the water sprite, those spiders went in willingly. Our Cowry Catchers called them. The spiders actually carried Marlowe to safety.
Can the Cowry Catchers talk to spiders?
Signed Silvio. Gerard watched the spider start down the wall.
Not exactly. The spiders don't seem to be true sentient beasts. They're more like pets. They can be tamed and taught to respond to commands, and they can form attachments. Cowry Catchers aren't good at defending themselves, so they tame spiders. Spiders provide them with bubble nests, where they can breathe without going to the surface and exposing themselves to predators. In return, the Cowry Catchers catch fish for the spiders and tend their eggs. This is a very old relationship. I believe it predates the coming of the wyverns. However, cowry catchers used to have friendly interactions with land shelts. They used to harvest the cowry shells that were the basis for early money in the islands. Now, land shelts seek to enslave them at every opportunity. Cowry catchers understand our speech, but we cannot hear theirs. They are treated like dumb beasts. They are one of the most pitiful victims of the social system currently in place, yet they survive. I admire them. They are the mortal enemies of wyverns. A colony of cowry catchers and spiders in a reef is the surest defense against wyvern infestation.
There was a splash behind them, and Gerard turned to see a cowry catcher in the shallow water on the edge of the bubble nest. It had long black hair and a mottled gray and black hide. Its eyes were large, black, and wet, its ears fleshy and hairless. Gerard could not tell for certain whether it was male or female. The spider skittered across the wall of the room and came to the cowry catcher very much as Gerard had seen falcons come to their handlers. The cowry catcher reached out to the spider, who quested with its front legs, touching the cowry catcher's hand as though seeking reassurance. Then the spider settled down on the edge of the water. Gwaine spoke.
"Friend, I need to know why you and the others won't talk to me."
The cowry catcher looked at him with its dull, flat face. Gerard had difficulty believing that it could understand. Then its mouth moved. It did look as though it were speaking, though no sound came. Tsu cocked her head.
"He says,"
she spoke slowly,
"the tunnel is in disrepair, but you may use it."
She listened, shook her head.
"He says fawns have been killing spiders. He says some of them came into the tunnel and killed spiders and cowry catchers. He says that they have been talking to wyverns."
There was a moment of dead silence.
Talking to wyverns? Tsu, are you sure that's what he said?
Tsu nodded. Gwaine questioned the cowry catcher further, but got no more information. The cowry catcher warned them that parts of the tunnel were destroyed or flooded. Gwaine kept returning to the point that troubled him.
Who is talking to wyverns? Which shelts? Were they fawns? What kinds of fawns? Did Grishnods get into the tunnel, perhaps? Keepers from the game lodge?
But the cowry catcher did not know. He had not seen what he spoke of, only heard rumors. He did not know whether the talk with wyverns had occurred in this tunnel or somewhere else. He only knew the rumor on the reef, that cowry catchers now avoided tunnels and bubble nests that had been created or used by Gwaine's resistance. The bubble nest in which they now stood was only used because it was relatively far from Asia Minor. Gwaine asked Myrta whether she'd heard of fawns treating with wyverns since his departure. She said that she had not.
Wyverns detest fawns. They hardly ever speak to them directly. If they have anything to say, they say it through a Grishnod, or at least a Panon. Fawns are nothing but food to a wyvern. Besides, the fawns of Asia Minor know better than anyone the cruelties that wyverns encourage. Why would they be talking to them?
Gerard might have pointed out that Gwaine himself had spoken with Dakar only that morning. However, he did not think this observation would be helpful. Further questioning of the cowry catcher yielded no more information. The Non looked increasingly restless. Both he and the spider seemed grateful to slip into the water and swim away when Gwaine told them goodbye. The group started walking towards Asia Minor. Most of the passage was not as roomy as the place they'd first entered. The first room, Gwaine told them, was a typical nest. The tunnel was a less natural formation. Gwaine explained that, when the tunnel was created, cowry catchers and selkies had spent days bringing air from the surface in upside-down buckets, a comical image that seemed to amuse Silvio.
The air stays sweet as long as we don't keep too many people here for too long. But fire will make the air go stale quickly. We try not to use lamps.
They walked, at best, over wet sand. More often they slogged through hock-deep water or slurping mud. Sometimes they were up to their chins in water, with just a thin layer of trapped air over their heads. Sometimes the air disappeared altogether. However, the water was very clear, and when they put their heads under, they could see the shape of the tunnel continuing further on. They always managed to swim to it. Around noon they paused to divvy out dried fish and nuts. No one was talking much, but Gerard could tell that Silvio was thinking. As they began to walk again, he said,
Gwaine, what do you know about the Magian deity?
He made Gerard repeat the question, since they were walking single file. Gwaine glanced around at Gerard.
Not much. Why do you ask?
We think he's Dakar's father.
Gwaine said nothing for a moment. At last, he said,
At one time, I had a theory that he was the primary deity before the temple system was standardized.
Before Morchella came,
said Silvio.
My assumption was based on the idea that the great islands are characteristic of their deities, that the gods dabble enough to imbue the islands with some of their personality. This made Cern's god extravagant, vicious, and prone to scrapping with its neighbors. Leklock would be rich, reclusive, power-hungry. Mance would be curious, intelligent, and self-absorbed. Haplag is gossipy and greedy. But Masia...
Proud.
Said Gerard.
And old.
Gwaine nodded.
Masia is the only island that maintains its own language. A very old language, with more similarities to dialects of Xavier and Hunti than to standard Grishnod. Masia Minor has been a thorn in Morchella's side for years, and yet it remains. I thought that perhaps Masia's god or gods were strong enough to defy the temple system and its high priestess.
You talk like this was an idea you discarded. What do you think now?
Gwaine shrugged.
I think that enough lives have been wasted in attempts to understand wyverns. I decided a long time ago that I was interested in understanding them only so far as it helped overthrow them. I decided that I was not going to pander to their vanity by making a study of their individual quirks, tastes, or politics.
Gerard couldn't really blame Gwaine for thinking this way, although he was sorry not to know more about Dakar's father. He had never been able to get her to talk about what had happened during her time away from the ship with the wyverns. A darker thought occurred to him.
Silvio, all those nights you sat up with Dakar playing her game, what was it you were trying to understand about her? About Morchella? What did you learn?
Silvio considered.
Just this. Dakar doesn't always play the game the same way. If she's having fun, she'll draw it out for a long time. But if she feels threatened, if you do something she wasn't expecting or change tactics suddenly, she'll end it. She'll decide to win, and she'll do it fast.
Chapter 27. Dust and Ashes.
There is no evidence that the old Firebird worship involved Shelt sacrifices, although fauns have burned Grishnods on the monuments in recent years. Grishnods feed fauns to wyverns, and fauns burn Grishnods to the Firebird. Religion in Wefravain has a certain symmetry. Gwaine, the truth about wyverns.
Travel by web tunnel turned out to be a long, exhausting ordeal. By late afternoon, no one was speaking much. Gerard had long since taken off his boots and tied them to his pack to keep them from getting sucked off his feet by the mud. Many sections of tunnel were too low for him, and his back ached from crouching. Everyone knew that coral cuts were slow to heal, but no one could avoid them in such tight spaces. By the time the light began to fade, their clothes and hands were bloody, but Gwaine only moved faster. Gerard wondered whether they would have to camp in the web tunnel. A dark crossing must have been possible when the tunnel was in perfect repair, but now it was unthinkable. Then, abruptly, there was stone rather than coral above their heads. It was dressed stone, not the liquid contours of beachside caves. Gwaine stopped. Gerard craned to see around him. The tunnel ahead was perfectly black.
Have we reached Masia Minor?
Gwaine nodded. He took some material from his pack and lit a small lamp. It revealed a square tunnel of rectangular stone and mortar, much worn by time and sea.
I believe this is an old sewer,
said Gwaine.
Judging from its size and the system it connects to, I believe that it was once part of a large city, one of several on the coast of Masia Minor. There are quite a few ruined cities on the island, although they were built largely of wood. Only the stone foundations of important buildings remain. The temples, on the other hand, were built primarily of stone, and their ruins are easy to find.
Firebird temples?
Asked Gerard. Gwaine nodded. Serwyn spoke, tired and gruff.
Who is meeting us? And where? Surely we're not going to the main lodge if it's full of Krishnards.
Myrta answered.
One of the minor lodges in the mountains. If Serengale and the others aren't there, someone can tell us where to go find them.
She took the lead as they splashed up the old sewer tunnel for what seemed like the entire first watch of the night. Sometimes the tunnel became so steep that they had to scramble for handholds on the slimy stones. Sometimes the water churning around their knees was strong, sometimes languid. Gwaine had removed Sue's harness, and she managed well enough in spite of her size, curved claws gripping the stone beneath the water. Silvio had considerably more trouble. The water often reached his waist or chest, and he was occasionally swept off his feet on the slimy inclines. Serwin finally turned to Gerard with a scowl.
I'll carry him if you won't.
That made Silvio laugh, and Gerard sputter.
I keep offering. He doesn't want me to.
Silvio yawned.
If we have to fight, I don't want you worn out. I suppose I'm slowing everyone down, though. I'll get on your back. Tell Serwin thank you.
I'd never have let Mink flounder along in this muck,
muttered Serwin. They emerged at last, breathless, bleeding, and exhausted, on foundations of ancient stone. Gerard could tell that this had once been a city, but the jungle had swallowed it when Hollivaris was still probably an uninhabited rock. Myrta led them away. She was not following any path that Gerard could see. He looked carefully for blazes on trees or other markings, but he saw nothing. The night was beautiful and clear. The scent of night-blooming jasmine hung heavy in the air, and Gerard spotted cloud-white flowers high overhead in the tangled canopy. Occasionally, enormous moths fluttered past. The moons, all nearly full, threw deep silver shadows all around. Twice, Myrta warned them away from poison sundew, and she and Gwaine both cautioned them against touching anything.
I don't know of any traps along this route,
said Myrta.
But I've been gone all summer.
She spoke in a curiously detached voice. Gerard thought the island must be affecting her badly. They began to pass clearings of charred jungle. Gwaine confessed that he wasn't entirely sure where they were.
Things have changed in the past 2 years.
Silvio had gone to sleep on Gerard's back. He was wedged against the pack, so that Gerard hardly needed to hang on to him. He jerked awake suddenly, shivered, and tucked his face against the back of Gerard's neck.
Where are we?
Still following Myrta through the mountains.
I smell something.
When Silvio did not continue, Gerard asked,
What?
Death or old blood or... I don't know. Could be lots of things.
Gerard reached up and took his hand.
I want to get down.
Gerard put him down. Silvio jammed his hands in his pockets. He wound his way past Serwin and Gwaine to walk beside Myrta at the head of the line. Marlowe, as usual, had taken up the rear, and Sue seemed to have flown off somewhere. Silvio walked beside Myrta for a bit. Gerard saw her glance at him, but she said nothing. Finally, Silvio signed,
Myrta, what did the fauns do with the bodies after the plague?
Myrta didn't know his signs, and Gerard didn't like this line of questioning. After a moment, Gwaine translated. Myrta stopped walking. Everyone stood there awkwardly for a moment. Then she made an abrupt turn from her line of travel and started off again. She was walking so fast now that Gerard wondered whether she was trying to lose them. Everyone scampered to keep up.
Myrta,
said Gwaine, but she didn't respond. After a few moments, they came out of the trees on the edge of a blackened clearing. Green shoots had begun to peek through, although the clearing had obviously been burned to the dirt not long ago. Staring out over the blackened jumble of ash, it took Gerard a moment to realize what he was looking at. He thought there were a great many trees, partially burned, with twisted roots and branches. Then some of the shapes began to resolve into horrible familiarity. A scrap of fabric, a glint of metal. His eyes drifted to the ground before his feet. What he'd taken for a charred bit of wood was a jawbone, complete with a few gleaming teeth, washed clean of ash by the recent summer rain. Further out, he saw the jutting silhouette of a rib cage. It was too big to have been a fawn. It must have been a pegasus, or a zebra. Everything with a hoof. Myrta turned to Silvio. Gerard saw that her cheeks were shining wet in the moonlight, and her eyes looked bloodshot. He thought she must have been crying for a long time, soundlessly, without sobs. And in the wet and darkness, with her speaking so seldom, no one had noticed.
We put them in mass graves, Silvio.
She spoke through clenched teeth.
The gamekeepers, the Majan Grishnards, they piled them in clearings and tried to burn them. But they couldn't find enough fuel, not without cutting down half the jungle. So the bodies just cooked a little and stank, and none of us fawns were well enough to do anything. We're still burning them. Every month or so we burn the clearings again.
She wiped her nose on her sleeve, and the muscles of her jaw stood out rigid.
On the coast, they threw the bodies into the sea, cartloads of them, and the reef sharks and rays churned up pink foam for a yellow month, and the bones are still washing ashore. I don't know what they did with my family. I was too sick to help.
Silvio had gone perfectly still. He did not turn away from her. He did not step back. Myrta stabbed a finger at Gerard, still speaking to Silvio.
You care about him? Well, they weren't any less unique or important or special, not any less loved.
Silvio covered his face with his hands and bowed his head. He wasn't saying anything, not even in Gerard's head, but the feeling radiating off him tasted like despair. Gwaine moved a fraction.
Myrta.
And you?
She rounded on him.
You left.
I was sick,
he said in a tiny voice. Myrta almost shouted.
So was everyone. But you ran off to your web tunnels and your cowry catchers and then to your pirate ship. You gave up, Gwaine. Not just on yourself. On us. Everyone thought you were dead, but then we found out that, no, you just abandoned us.
Gwaine looked shocked.
Serengale said she would kill me if I...
Serengale is not the only person on this island. There were lots of fawns who would have defended you. We would have rallied around you. Instead, all they had were the Zeds and their revenge cult.
She gulped back a sob.
There have been hardly any hunters on Major Minor these last 2 years. Do you know why? It's because there isn't enough game to hunt. At first, the Grishnards thought they'd let us repopulate, but that would take 20 years or more. Then they talked about bringing in fawn slaves from other places, but that seemed expensive. In the end, Lord Major decided to start selling the land to Grishnard farmers and prospectors. That's why we're being removed, because there aren't enough of us left to be worth hunting.
Silvio's tail was hanging straight down, so that it lay in the ashes. Gerard wanted to go to him, but he was certain that Silvio did not wish to be defended. Myrta looked almost as pitiful, fragile and miserable and tear-streaked. She glared down at Silvio.
Why? Why did you do this?
Silvio dropped his hands and looked up at her. Gerard came forward at last, crouched down beside Silvio, and put an arm around him.
He did it for me.
It was more difficult to say than he'd expected, but he kept talking.
Because he thought Marcello would kill me if we didn't catch Gwaine.
Gerard turned to Silvio.
She actually told you that, didn't she? When she spoke to you in the temple that day before we left? She threatened you to get at me. Why did I never think she might try the reverse?
Silvio squirmed, but Gerard hung on to him.
He's telling me not to make excuses for him, that the truth is complicated. He's right. The truth is complicated. But what I just said is also the truth.
Silvio stopped struggling. There were tears in his eyes.
He says,
continued Gerard,
that he sees now that he can't fix it. No matter what he does, he can't fix it. He thinks maybe he deserves to know that.
Gerard thought that 2 of them crying was enough, so he took a deep breath and forced a steady voice.
Silvio says he's terribly sorry, but he knows that's not worth anything.
Myrta was staring down at them with an expression of powerful mixed emotions. Disdain, pity, hate, and maybe a tiny bit of envy. Gwaine finally came up and put an arm around her. Gerard thought for a moment that she might hit him. Then she crumpled.
You destroyed my life. Everyone I loved.
Gerard could not tell whether she was talking to Silvio, or Gwaine, or himself.
And you know what the worst part is?
Gwaine put the other arm around her. He spoke into her hair.
What's the worst part?
Myrta sniffled against his shirt.
The worst part is I can't even kill you.
Chapter 27. The Price.
Evidence from the ancient funeral mounds of Asia Minor seems to indicate that Xavier fauns were the earliest inhabitants of the island. They were probably the rulers of the earliest civilization. Xavier and Pegasus bones can be found as far down as this author has ever attempted to excavate. It seems reasonable to suppose that migratory winged animals and their shelts were the first sentient creatures to settle in the islands. Gwaine, the non-Grishnads of Wefravain.
There was a moment of confused silence. Then Marlowe said, with his usual dead calm,
You mean that hypothetically, I assume?
Myrta shook her head.
They're waiting for us in the lodge. I had a Pegasus from them last night.
Gwaine pushed her back to arm's length, stared at her. Myrta ran a finger over his cheek.
It's why they sent me, Gwaine. Because they thought I hated you enough. And they thought you would trust me.
Gwaine looked a little pale.
Who?
Serwin, whom Gerard was almost certain had been sniffling a moment ago, growled.
You had better explain yourself, Myrta. Quickly.
She glanced at him, her dark eyes contemptuous.
Or you'll what? Add me to the pile?
No.
Said Gwaine. He caught her wrists.
No one's going to... We are not going to attack each other. I don't understand. Please.
She kissed him, full on the mouth, with her hands on either side of his face and his own hands still locked around her wrists.
Now do you understand?
She whispered.
No.
Stammered Gwaine, who looked like he might fall over. Silvio could not resist a comment.
In my experience, that never improves a person's analytical skills.
I love you,
said Myrta.
I was sent to kill you, but I can't. I don't even think I can kill Silvio. Isn't that odd?
Why?
Whispered Gwaine.
Yes, why can't you kill me?
Silvio had already made the switch from despair to dark humor.
You could have killed him any number of times this summer,
said Serwin.
What are you talking about, Myrta?
She sighed and dropped her hands from Gwaine's face. She looked back out over the botched pyre.
Last spring, after the Grishnads made their final decision to cleanse the island of fauns, we had an unlikely visitor. I wasn't present, so I don't know exactly how it happened, but I know the priestess came here looking for the most powerful fauns on the island. She spoke to Serengale and her inner circle of followers. The priestess told them that she would spare Asia Minor if we brought her you.
Myrta glanced at Gwaine.
She believed correctly that we might be able to find you. This is all kept very secret. The Zeds discussed it, and they decided the best thing to do would be to send a ship and fauns who were sympathetic to you, and give them the story that you've heard, that we were fighting among ourselves and could not make a decision without you. They sent as many of your friends as possible. They did this partially because they thought such persons had a better chance of finding you, but also to get them out of the way.
Gwaine sat down slowly on the edge of the clearing. They were all footsore, and everyone followed his example at once. Gerard thought that Gwaine did it less from exhaustion than from shock.
I was the only one,
continued Myrta,
who knew the truth, who knew the way in which you could really save Asia Minor. I do not think that even the priestess's admiral knew our purpose. After they showed up,
Myrta indicated Gerard and Silvio.
Things got more complicated. I received a message telling me that I must bring all three of you to the island, that the priestess would reward the fauns of Asia Minor handsomely if I did. I think they suspected that I might balk, though, because the wyverns showed up to invite you to the conference. I was supposed to function as backup, to guide you into a trap if you decided to do something unexpected, which of course you did.
Gwaine ran a hand over his face.
And what do you think we should do now?
Myrta looked surprised.
What do I think?
You understand what's happening better than we do.
But I betrayed you.
Gwaine smiled weakly.
No. You betrayed them.
Myrta opened her mouth, then shut it.
Do Serengale's fawns know that we're here?
Asked Marlowe.
Do the wyverns know?
Myrta shook her head.
Not precisely. I was to bring you to the lodge in the mountains. Fauns would be waiting there. They would spin you some pretty lies, tie you up at first opportunity, and take you to the great lodge. They don't know where we are right now.
Gwaine nodded.
Are there any fawns left on Major Minor who don't want to make bargains with wyverns?
That bargain,
Interrupted Marlowe.
do you think she's lying to them, or do you think...
Silvio looked up.
Morchella does reward loyalty, but at a high price.
Gerard translated what Silvio had said and added,
She saved my life from the spiders, but I paid, believe me. She saved Silvio's life, but he paid and paid and paid. You don't want her bargains.
An even more unpleasant idea occurred to him.
If she's planning on helping these fawns, then what are all the kings doing at the lodge?
Serwin shrugged.
Do you really think the kings are there? That seems unlikely to me.
Gerard took a deep breath.
If she really called them, then they're here. The gods do not often threaten kings, but their threats do inspire fear. They can turn your peasants against you. They can turn your neighbors against you. Even a king can be called as a temple sacrifice. With the unrest in the islands right now? With piracy on the rise? With Cern's economy in shambles and the fawn and hunty cities in the lawless lands waiting to pounce? The last thing the Grishnard kings want is trouble from the gods. Morchella can help them restore order and preserve their own sovereignty. The Great Lodge is ancient common ground. The kings of the great islands don't always trust each other enough to meet on their own soil. But here, they feel safe.
Marlowe spoke slowly.
Perhaps she's planning on brokering some kind of truce between the fawns and Grishnards? In exchange for support of the temple system?
Gwaine turned again to Myrta.
Is there no one who might talk to us?
I don't know. I've been gone all summer. Only a few of the fawns knew about the wyverns. They did as Serengale told them, but it wasn't as though she explained and took a vote.
At that moment, there was a soft whoosh, and Sue dropped down in front of Gwaine. She shook herself.
Bad things are happening.
She hissed.
More of them?
Asked Gwaine dully. Marlowe spoke.
Did you see any fawns, Sue?
Sue shook her head.
Winged wolves.
They talk to you?
Asked Gwaine.
I thought they didn't talk to you.
They are concerned. They say all the Pegasus still alive on the island are being kept in cages in the game lodge. They say they have inadequate prey and are hungry.
Gwaine looked bewildered.
Why are the Pegasus being caged?
The winged wolves aren't sure, but they think it's because the fawns don't want anyone to leave the island.
Ah,
Marlowe sat back.
there's your answer, Gwaine. Serengale doesn't trust her own followers. She's afraid they'll run away, probably to our ships.
Gwaine frowned.
How long have the Pegasus been caged, Sue? How many are there?
200 or 300. The winged wolves say the Grishnards have been collecting them all summer, and many of the fawns have helped.
Myrta shrugged.
The gamekeepers are planning to sell us. I'm sure they could get plenty of cowries for that many Pegasus.
200 or 300?
Gwaine looked appalled.
There used to be 2,000 or 3,000.
No one said anything. Gwaine took a deep breath.
All right, so here's what we'll do. We'll go down to the lodge and see if we can talk to anyone. Find out what's going on. See if we can set the Pegasus loose. If we can do that, then any of the fawns or Pegasus who want to join our ships can do so. As for the rest, I've already told everyone what the wyverns are. If these fawns want to make treaties with them, if they want to parley with the Grishnard kings and help them win back their kingdoms in exchange for becoming one of the great islands with a temple in place of a lodge, that's their concern. But no one should be trapped here.
So you think that's what Morchella is offering?
Asked Marlowe.
The fawns will be mercenaries in support of the Grishnards in exchange for a change in the slave species laws?
That would make a kind of sense.
Said Serwin.
The fawns here are excellent fighters. They've been fighting their whole lives. Silvio, you worked with Morchella for a long time. Do you think she'd do that?
Silvio gave a faint shrug. He signed.
Maybe.
You have been listening to The Guild of the Cowry Catchers by Abigail Hilton. Copyright Abigail Hilton. The ebook for Cowry Catchers Book 5 includes 16 illustrations in ink and watercolor by Sarah Cloutier. as well as 13 portraits by Greensprite and 2 versions of the map by Jeff McDowell. The ebook is available from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Smashwords, iBooks, and Kobo. The rest of the series is also available as illustrated ebooks, and the entire series is available in non-illustrated paper on Amazon. Visit my website at abigailhilton.com for information, including how to get 25% discounts on paper books and how to order signed books. This podcast included the vocal talents of
Nathan Lowell
as Gerard,
Norm Sherman,
as Silvio,
Chris Lester,
as Gwaine,
Hughes Hilton,
as Marlowe,
Brian Lincoln,
as Serwin,
Philippa Valentine,
as Myrta. Sound effects for this podcast were provided by SoundSnap, the Free Sound Project, and Sound Dogs. The intro music was Grace by Beth Quist. The outro music was Finale, also by Beth Quist. Both were licensed with permission from Magnatune.net. Music for Book 5 of Cowry Catchers included selections from Digital Juice at digitaljuice.com and Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com. It also included additional music from Beth Quist, Diana Rowan, Jamie Saber, and David Modica, all from Magnatune.net. All the music was licensed and used according to the terms of the websites. This is a standard copyright now. This podcast is provided for your personal enjoyment only. You can download and archive the episodes for your personal use. You may not re-upload, mirror, or publicly redistribute the audio files, nor can you alter, remix, or create derivative works. And I'm back. This is 2026 Abby, coming to you with a few thoughts on the episode. So here we have several reversals coming fast. If you have read any of my books before, you know that I tend to redeem some characters that have behaved in pretty despicable ways. Silvio's redemption might be the biggest ask that I have ever made of an audience. His act of biological warfare is pretty horrific. You could argue whether killing 100 people makes you any worse than killing one, but it's an act that can't really be atoned for, and it's part of a cycle of violence, of which Silvio is both a victim and a perpetrator. And our world is full of cycles of violence, and often they don't stop until some clemency is offered that is in no way deserved. But this is a big ask, and I have Myrta here point out something that I, as the author, know, and that other authors know, and that readers often don't notice, which is that we care about Silvio and Gerard and Gwaine because I have developed these characters and I have shown you their struggles and I have shown you their inner world and I've shown you the forces that shaped and broke and destroyed them and made them the way they are. I did not develop many of these characters that they have killed or hurt badly. Those people were just as special. They were just as lovable. They would have been just as empathetic. They also would have had their own crimes, their own unforgivable acts, their own cycles of violence. I've developed certain characters and not others, and so it's easier for the audience to love or forgive or empathize, of course, with the characters I have developed. But this is a trick that authors perform all the time, and I don't know how many other authors are sometimes slightly uncomfortable, with the fact that you would care about the castle guards that just got murdered if I had developed the castle guards, if I had showed you their inner world. But I can make it easy for you to not care about them by simply not developing them as people. This is a form of manipulation that authors engage in and that storytellers have engaged in since Homer, since people have been telling stories to each other. And I think it's worth pointing out sometimes, via characters like Myrta, the hypocrisy somewhat inherent in storytelling itself, wherein authors guide your empathy to a certain extent. Anyway, I do like redemption arcs. I think they're cathartic and emotionally satisfying. I think that in real life, all of this is obviously a lot more messy, and usually people who do get second chances should not get second chances with the same people. You notice I am not developing a romance between Silvio and any of the fawns of Masia Minor. I think usually second chances look different than first chances, and while a person may get a second chance, they don't get a second chance in the same way. There is something that is lost forever. And no one really deserves second chances. There's just some luck and randomness, and some people get that, and some people don't. And some people make good use of second chances, and some people don't. In the real world, it's actually quite common for people to make terrible use of second and third chances, which is why others become jaded with handing them out. Anyway, it is true that I like redemption arcs, but there are consequences in my stories for horrific behavior. It would be wrong, I think, to say that any of my stories have characters behave egregiously, and then there are no consequences. There are consequences. And like I said, second and third chances do not look like first chances, and they never can, and they never will. This aspect of the story is definitely a bridge too far for some readers, and I completely understand why. Like I have said before, this is a story about the bad guys. I lost at least one beta reader who simply could not stomach empathy for a character who had behaved in this way. Understandable. Anyway, like I said, consequences, birds coming home to roost. Silvio and Gerard also live in a world with a lot of bad people who've done a variety of reprehensible things, and all of that's about to come together with a big bang. So I hope you enjoy what's coming up if you are still with me, and I will see you in the next episode. This is Abigail Hilton, and you have been listening to the Pirates of Wefravain saga. Join me on Patreon for early episodes, long-form interviews, forum access, personal updates, and lots of artwork, including maps and species charts. That's patreon.com/Abigail Hilton. If you want the whole story now with no interruptions and some remastering of the early books for sound quality, you can find the entire series at shop.abigailhilton.com, along with all my other novels. The audiobooks are delivered by BookFunnel. Background music was Hidden Sky by Jamie Sieber, licensed from Magnatune.net circa 2014. The Guild of the Cowry Catchers podcast is an audio adaptation of the Pirates of Wefravain saga, written and produced by Abigail Hilton. Original production copyright 2010. All rights are reserved to the author.